This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sub-Saharan Africa in the grips of a third wave of COVID-19 infections, this as vaccine hesitancy continues. Egypt's President El-Sisi opens naval base close to border with Libya. And a military plane crash in the Philippines leaves 45 dead, including 3 civilians. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, South African sprinter Akani Simbine on a mission to bring gold from Tokyo. We begin on a tragic note from the north, where at least 43 people drowned when their ship sank off the Tunisian coast. The migrants were trying to cross the Mediterranean from Libya to Italy. 84 others have been rescued by the Tunisian Navy. According to a statement from the humanitarian organization, the Tunisian Red Crescent, the boat had set off from Zuwara on Libya's coast. Most of the migrants were from Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea and Bangladesh. Improved weather has seen an increase in the number of attempted crossings to Europe, with the drowning incidents being reported. Egypt inaugurated a massive naval base near the Libyan border. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi marked the opening ceremony on Saturday. The event saw a display of Egypt's latest Navy vessels in a military drill. Sisi extended an invitation to Libya's president of the Presidency Council, Mohammed Al-Menfi, and the Crown Prince of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, to join these celebrations. Here's Adil Mahri with more.
Egyptian fighter jets line up in the sky to display 2 numbers, 7 and 3, a gesture for the official inauguration of the 3rd of July Navy base. The more than 2,600-acre project is one of the biggest Egyptian military establishments on the Mediterranean. Standing just 140 kilometers away from the Egyptian western border, it is the closest to Libya.
The Egyptian move to station a navy base in the region has a strategic advantage. It helps in curbing the flow of migrants from Egypt and Libya to Europe. It empowers Egypt to stand against any attempt to tamper with Libya's security. Egypt won't stand with tied hands if any country attempts to intervene by sparking instability in Libya.
Saturday's celebration welcomed 47 new fighting vessels to the Navy force. The list included a German 209 submarine and 3 frigates. One of them is a French Gawain design built in Egypt. A military drill displayed the additional power this new fleet brings to the Egyptian armed forces.
This base is a message of stability, security, cooperation, and peace to Egypt's neighbors. It is a part of a strategic vision that aims to defend our nation against terrorism and extremism with development and enlightenment. It is a part of a comprehensive plan to maximize Egypt's benefits from its seas. The Navy forces are one of the elements in this plan. Without stability and security, there shall be no development or prosperity.
Regional leaders joined Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in this landmark step for the North African nation. And yet another sign of support to Libyan leaders, standing right next to Sisi, was Mohammed al-Menfi, the president of the Libyan Presidency Council.
The invitation extended to Mohammed Al-Menfi is an Egyptian display of support to the new Libyan Transitional Authority, including the unity government. Based on the Libyan political agreement, Menfi is the commander of the Libyan armed forces. His presence reflects Egypt's keenness to coordinate with Libya any military move near their shared border.
Beside its military purposes, the 3rd of July base will include a trade port to support the developing Egyptian western region. It brings a desalination station with a 50,000 cubic meters of daily capacity to cover its needs and the residents living around the base. In recent years, Egypt has been heavily investing in securing its maritime interests. The nation's water territories represent an additional 27% to its land area. The military base doesn't only provide a strategic advantage for Egypt, but it's also a base of economic revival to this entire region. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, from the 3rd of July base in Marsa Matruh, Egypt.
Traders in Tunisia are hopeful the reopening of the border with Libya will bring economic relief after years of war in the oil-rich North African neighbor. But as CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma reports, economists are skeptical.
The Tunisian coastal town of Ben Guarden is 30 kilometers from Libya's frontier. The border town in Tunisia's underdeveloped and impoverished southeastern region has felt the impact of lack of business most. Traders in the town say the reopening of the Libyan border is a positive sign that is hoped will stimulate economic growth.
We are not 100% sure that it will be beneficial, the opening of the borders between Tunisia and Libya, because there is always a risk that everyone will fall through due to the political situation in Tunisia, which is not in the best shape.
Tunisia's economy has deteriorated from crisis to crisis since the country's 2011 revolution. The coronavirus pandemic and lockdown measures have played their part too. The decade-long uprising in Libya that killed dictator Muammar Gaddafi also had an impact on Tunisian economy.
We hope that the situation will improve so that citizens who cross the border will not remain blocked there for 2, 3, 4 hours or even the entire day. Ben Guarden will always have the characteristics of being a border city that is closely linked to Libya and its trade.
Tunisian economist Ezzedine Saiden has however downplayed the gains made, saying a political crisis in Tunis could undermine the country's trade efforts.
If a country is weak internally, it cannot succeed externally and vice versa. Today we are so weak internally that it seems to me that it is going to be extremely difficult to achieve concrete results in everything that is happening in Libya today. So we're making attempts and efforts. We're making trips, speeches, announcements, things like that, but we do not see the results.
Tunisian traders say they hope for better times ahead. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
As South Africa battles its third wave of COVID-19, the country's Health Products Authority has approved the use of Chinese Sinovac vaccine. This comes days after the opposition supporters, mainly drawn from the Economic Freedom Fighters Party, took to the streets for other vaccines to be available in curbing the spread of the virus. The party gives South African authorities 7 days to approve the use of Sinovac and Russian Sputnik 4 vaccines. Only Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer doses have been used since the rollout began in South Africa. The Delta variant is reported to be driving up the number of infections in the current wave. Another batch of Sinopharm vaccines donated by the Chinese government has arrived in Comoros. Speaking after receiving the consignment at the Prince Said Ibrahim International Airport, the island nation's foreign minister, Mohamed El Amin Souef, thanked the Chinese government for the donation. The doses will be used in the Comoros' second vaccination campaign, which is set to kick off in the second week of July. The first batch of Sinopharm vaccines was used in the first round of vaccinations, in which 7% of the population was inoculated. In this exercise, the government is targeting to scale up to 21% of the population. Sub-Saharan Africa is in the grips of a third wave of COVID-19 infections that threatens to be even more brutal. The World Health Organization has advised countries to swiftly implement widespread vaccination programs to curb infections. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports.
The growth of COVID-19 infections in sub-Saharan Africa is now reportedly the fastest in the world. The new wave is feared could surpass previous peaks in just a matter of days. WHO says vaccine rollout in sub-Saharan Africa remains key in guarding against new variants.
If you get vaccinated, and yes, you may still get the infection, because we know that these vaccines are not going to protect you 100% from the infection. So there is a small risk you get infected and you could pass it on to others. Why do you want to take the risk of doing that? Why do you want to be one person in the chain of transmission? What we need to do in the world today is to break those chains of transmission, get a control on this disease. So that's why we say get vaccinated as soon as you can get access to your vaccine when your turn comes, and continue to take all the precautions so that you're completely protecting yourself as well as protecting others around you.
We're seeing globally that vaccination offers a clear path towards ending devastating surges of severe cases. Yet, just over 1% of Africans are now fully vaccinated, compared to 11% of people globally and over 46% of people in the United Kingdom and the United States, for example.
While some countries have taken steps to improve preparedness, few have had sufficient resources to strengthen public health systems. With new variants emerging, the threat to healthcare systems in sub-Saharan Africa is feared could rise.
While variants may be more transmissible, it's important to remember that people spread this virus. Every person plays a role in stopping COVID-19 transmission by getting vaccinated as soon as you can, by wearing a mask, by physically distancing, and frequently washing your hands. These basic prevention measures are still the key to ending this pandemic.
The International Monetary Fund has put forward a proposal that targets vaccinating at least 40% of the global population by the end of 2021. Africa is expected to receive 30% vaccination coverage through COVAX. The IMF says it's essential that vaccines are delivered to sub-Saharan Africa as soon as possible. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up, a military plane crash in the Philippines leaves 45 people dead, including 3 civilians.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
A military plane crash in the Philippines has killed 45 people, including 3 civilians on the ground. Over 90 people were on board, deployed as part of a mission to fight militants. Many had just graduated from basic military training. Our correspondent Gretchen Malalad has the latest.
The crash of the C-130 Hercules military aircraft is considered the country's worst air disaster in nearly 30 years. The aircraft with tail number 5125 was trying to land at the Jolo runway in the southern Philippines when it overshoot. Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief Cirilito Sabihana said the pilot was trying to regain power but failed, and the aircraft crashed in Barangay Bangkal in Paticul, Sulu. Billows of smoke were seen by residents living near the crash site as the aircraft went into flames. The military immediately conducted rescue operations. They have released photos from the crash site, and the tail end of the plane was the only part left intact. So the province of Jolo is where government forces have been battling Abu Sayyaf militants for decades now. Military spokesperson Colonel Edgardo Arevalo said that there's no indication of any attack on the plane. So this crash comes at a time after a newly acquired Black Hawk helicopter crashed last month during a nighttime training, which killed all 6 soldiers on board. So this is the second crash involving the military in the last 2 months. Gretchen Malalid, CGTN, Manila.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he's directed U.S. intelligence agencies to investigate an international ransomware attack that hit hundreds of U.S. businesses and Swedish shops. Biden said the U.S. government is not certain who is behind that attack. Washington will respond when they determine who is responsible. Initial suspicions fell on Russian gang involvement. On Friday, a computing network management tool by Kaseya came under cyber attack. This prompted the U.S. IT company to advise businesses to shut down servers to avoid ransomware. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency said in a statement it was taking action to address the attack. An approaching storm is raising concerns for search and rescue at a collapsed building in Florida. Operations were suspended briefly on Saturday to allow crews to prepare to demolish the remaining part of the structure. Officials worry high winds from Tropical Storm Elsa could threaten the part of the tower that's still standing. A demolition could happen as early as Sunday, 2 days ahead of the storm's expected landfall. On Saturday, 2 more people were found dead, bringing the death toll to 24. 121 others remain missing. Rescuers are still searching for victims from a deadly landslide in central Japan. Crews pulled 1 woman out of the debris today. She is in serious condition. About 20 others remain missing after a wall of mud and dirt swept away homes in the city of Atami Saturday morning. At least 2 people were killed. Strong storms have been pounding parts of Japan for several days now, turning many streams into raging rivers, and more downpours are expected. COVID-19 has changed our lives forever. Midwives in particular have had to rethink how they support expectant mothers who are worried about their pregnancy and the prospect of giving birth during the pandemic. CGTN's Julie Shire met up with independent midwife Angela Wakeford in Cape Town, South Africa, to find out how challenging it's been.
My name is Angela Wakeford. I am an independent midwife in Cape Town. That means that I'm self-employed and don't work for a hospital. Women and their partners contract with me for their pregnancy and birth care, and I love what I do. I've had a few clients who've had COVID during their pregnancies, which is very worrying for them, but everybody's recovered fine and gone on to have a normal natural birth. Luckily now I had the COVID vaccine to help protect myself and them. So on the whole, it hasn't made a huge difference to me. My clients tell me that they worried about getting COVID, but they're also worried about not getting the care that they need and want, and that reassurance that everything is on track with their pregnancy. So on the whole, they've still had their maternity care and ultrasound scans, but a lot of sadness that the partners couldn't attend for scans with them. So quite a lot of mourning for not having the family-centered approach, which is what they want. A lot of my information sessions are all online now, so there's just one less exposure. But obviously when it comes to the actual pregnancy checkups, we need to see each other in person. I'm having to do more sort of emotional support than before. A lot of women are very anxious about the backup plan, because you have to have a medical backup plan for a home birth in case of complications, and that has been more challenging than anything else. They are very grateful for being shepherded through this awful time. How life has changed now, particularly with COVID and pregnancy, I think people's risk assessments have changed. You know, re-looking at where do I feel safest to give birth. COVID-19 changed the pattern of where women want to give birth. It seems now that it's a safer place to be birthing at home, in your privacy of your home, not going into hospital with COVID in, knowing that your partner is going to be with you. So women and couples who might not have thought about it 3 years ago are really seriously considering it, and there's a lot less resistance from families. Do I feel like a COVID hero? I don't really. I mean, I'm carrying on doing what I always do, have done, and I love doing, but I just love assisting and you know, supporting women through their birth. So it won't be something that I'll give up easily.
Coming up in sports. South African sprinter Akani Simbine on a mission to bring gold from Tokyo.
It's taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.